Welcome back to MTN Live in the Mountains. Well, earlier today I got the chance to speak with Congresswoman Virginia Foxx. She represents North Carolina 5th District and often has a good voice for North Carolina here up in Washington as well. So I got the chance to speak with her earlier today a little bit about some of the Republicans' budget plan in comparison to the President's budget plan, just kind of talk about some numbers and stuff like that. But it's a pretty good interview. We'll go ahead and show you now. Virginia Foxx, she's Congresswoman Virginia Foxx, and she's serving North Carolina's 5th District. Congresswoman, thank you for coming on and speaking with me today.
Thank you for having me.
I want to first talk a little bit about the national debt. I think that that's kind of a big topic right now. We talk about, we're right now about $16.7, $16.8 trillion in debt. And I thought this was interesting, and just because when Obama actually came into office back in 2009, the debt at that time was about $10 trillion in debt. And before that, we were always hovering at right around $5 trillion in debt. We always kind of were. And then when Bush left office, he added about $4 trillion in debt. Now, mind you that we did go through 2 wars, and there was a lot of reasons behind that, and we all know about that, especially with 9/11, and our economy got hurt. But since then, we've added $6 trillion in debt under Obama's current administration. I think that that's crazy, especially the fact when back in 2008 when he came on, he said that the problem with the Bush administration for the last 4 years, I guess, is of course adding to the national debt. He said it was un-American and unpatriotic. Which I
You've
thought,
got a good memory.
Which I thought, that's pretty interesting to say that we've added $4 trillion in debt. It's un-American, unpatriotic. Now we've added $6 trillion in debt in his administration. And
he added more in 4 years than was added under President Bush in 8 years. And as you pointed out, we had 9/11 and 2 wars.
Right, and 2 wars. And so I think that's just pretty amazing to me. Also the fact that he said when he came in office that in his first term he would cut the deficit in half.
Correct.
And he's doubled it. So it's actually gone the opposite direction. So I'm wondering, especially with, of course, the new budget plan and everything as well, there seems to be a sense of you would definitely want to balance the budget now, especially since we are so much in debt. And of course, President Obama finally proposed his budget plan, and it never seems to balance. So I'm just wondering, what's your kind of intake on that?
Well, you've done a great job of summarizing what the history has been. It is accurate. Number one, the president violated the law 4 out of the 5 years that he's been in office by not presenting his budget on time. It's supposed to be presented the first Monday in February. He violated that 4 out of 5 years. His budget never balances. In fact, it would take the debt up to $23 trillion. Under the budget is a 10-year budget. It's a 10-year window, and CBO scores it on that. The budget that Republicans passed, which we call the Path to Prosperity, would balance in 10 years. It saves Medicare, saves Medicaid, and would help the economy get back on track. Right now, the debt and the deficit are weighing down the economy so badly that we're going to continue to have what amounts to 12% unemployment rate. I know the official unemployment rate is about 8%, but the actual unemployment rate is more like 12%. We have the same number of people working as we did in 1969. So what's happened is people have given up hope. They've left the workforce. We have the highest number of people on disability that we've ever had.
Yeah, 50 million Americans are on food stamps right now.
Right. Highest number on food stamps. We just have a totally dysfunctional economy, and Republicans believe it's all due to the policies of the president.
Right.
He said when he first came to office, pass this $1 trillion stimulus, I promise you a 5% unemployment rate after 4 years. And of course, none of that. I think, Drew, it's so great that you have pointed out that he has done the opposite of what he promised to do. And not only that, he's done the opposite times 2. in many cases. And so, you know, not enough people are paying attention to that, I think.
Well, I think if you actually look at the numbers, is what I'm trying to get to. I mean,
that's right.
I'm just basing it off facts. It is kind of staggering when you actually look at that.
That's exactly right. Just the facts, ma'am, just the facts.
Right.
And it's not a partisan thing when you just look at the numbers. The president blames it on the Republicans that we didn't do more of what he wanted to do, therefore he would have fixed it. But anybody who has any understanding, again, of Keynesian economics, and you don't even have to have that, economists are saying over and over, it's too much money being spent by the federal government.
Right.
And that's what's ruining the economy.
Yeah, we are spending a ton of money. I think that's the main thing, is we're actually spending more than we're receiving. That's why we're so much in debt, I think.
And yet, this year, we will take in more than the federal government has ever taken in.
Right, and that's another interesting fact as well. We're actually going to be spending more this year than we spent last year and the year before that, despite the sequester cuts. If you want to call them a cut, I think it's more. I think you can actually really call it more of a reduce in spending, because still technically, even with the cut, I think we're still spending more than we were last year. Is that not correct?
That's correct. And the reason is we have all these programs set up on automatic pilot. And that's what Republicans are dealing with. The president never deals with those. Medicare, for example, Medicaid, lots of other programs that are called entitlements.
Right, and when you say entitlements, we have to spend money on these programs.
That's right. The way the law is written now, we have to.
But there is
My contention is we should change the law and stop doing that. The Constitution doesn't have the word entitlement in it.
Right. Well, there's actually a lot of other things I think that we spend our money on too that are kind of fat. They're almost like the fat. They're pointless spending. Like a lot of university studies and stuff like that. Don't you think that we could kind of cut some of that stuff out, cut out the fat and leave the meat there? You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And we should stop the federal government spending money on things that it has no business spending money on. Those things need to be devolved to the states, and the states need to be handling them. One of the key ways we save money is by making a block grant to the states for Medicaid. Yes, we have people in this country who need medical care that are too poor to afford it themselves. And yes, we're compassionate people in this country. We want to do it. But by having those things at the federal level, you simply increase the cost by having a federal bureaucracy. You could do it much less expensively. Education is another issue where we spend a lot of money. A lot of transportation issues.
What about defense, too? I mean, we actually spend, I think it's a recent stat I think I read was 5 times we spend the amount of money on defense as maybe China or something like that. Is that not true? Do we spend that much money?
Not more than China, I don't think. Well, it depends on how you're looking at it. Do you look at percent of the budget or total dollars? But think about it this way. The federal government was created to provide for the defense of this nation. It is the main function of the federal government. And so it is appropriate for the federal government to spend money on defense. Again, the other units of government, the state governments can't provide for defense. The local governments can't do that.
So something has to.
It is the role of the federal government. If we don't have the federal government keeping us free, then the rest of it won't matter.
Right. And when you talk about the Republicans' budget, the Republicans' party budget, we're actually talking about, I guess, Paul Ryan's budget is not technically what it is, but he's the one who proposed it.
That's right.
Paul Ryan is, of course, the former, I guess,
he ran for vice president.
Ran for vice president with Mitt Romney, and he proposed this, and he says he's going to balance the budget in 10 years without raising taxes. He's actually going to increase spending by 3.4% every year.
Right.
So he's still increasing spending by still reducing the deficit and actually balancing the budget.
That's right. And Paul first proposed the path to prosperity when we were in the minority. Nancy Pelosi was Speaker, but he put this together. He was on the Budget Committee. He introduced it. I think that first year, very few people paid attention to it. I didn't even know about it because we have, 8,000 to 10,000 bills introduced every year.
Right.
Then the second year, my staff noticed the bill, and I signed on to it. It was called the Path to Prosperity then. And then when we got back in the majority 3 years ago, Paul put that forward. He made refinements on it each year. But he doesn't like it to be called the Paul Ryan budget. It's the budget that is presented by the Budget Committee. It was adopted by the Budget Committee and adopted by the Republicans in the House. So it is rightfully the Republican budget. But it did come from his understandings, his study, his proposals.
So let me get the numbers right here, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. But he's still increasing spending by 3.4% every single year, compared to the president's budget, where he's going to be increasing spending by 5% every year. Now, over 10 years, it's going to be about $41 trillion of spending under the Republican budget, $46 trillion under the president's budget, and the difference is one balances and one doesn't. Is that it? I mean, other than the fact that the Republicans plan on not rising taxes, and of course Obama probably wants to raise taxes.
That's right.
That's all it is.
Well, and we save Medicare. The president doesn't do anything about saving Medicare or Medicaid, and those programs are going to go broke. And nonpartisan people have said that. We don't have enough money in this country to pay for Medicare and Medicaid and all the other programs that the president wants to pay for without the country going bankrupt.
Now, why is the Democratic Party, especially with the Paul Ryan budget, attack that though? I think there was the old like pushing the granny off the cliff type thing that with this. What's the response to that?
Well, I think you'll have to ask them that, but I think it's just a knee-jerk reaction that if it's a proposal from the Republicans, they're going to oppose it. They just, I think, live in a never-never world where they think you can continue to spend. But look at Greece. Look at countries overseas. We are actually in some ways worse off than Greece, but because the dollar is still a strong currency, we've been able, and because Ben Bernanke keeps printing dollars, we've been able to withstand what's happened in Greece. So we're fortunate, but it cannot go on forever. And Paul's approach has always been, and our approach has always been, is when you know something bad is going to happen, you have a moral obligation to do what you can to stop that. And so Republicans have taken a moral stand on this. And we simply don't understand how our colleagues across the aisle can keep their head in the sand and not want to deal with it.
All right, I also want to quickly touch a little bit on Obamacare. When he actually brought this into office, he said it would cost a total of about $900 billion, actually under $1 trillion. And since that, it's actually latest calculations, I guess, by the Congressional Budget Office is it's about $2.8 billion already it's cost.
Trillion. It's cost already.
Yeah, already cost $2.8 trillion. He said it would cost $900 billion, just under $1 trillion, but it's actually cost 2.8 so far. And it actually supposedly will add another $6 trillion is what it's going to cost. Is that correct? Are those numbers?
Yeah, I have not looked at those numbers lately, but again, it is going to cost 5 or 6 times more than the president said it would. It is not going to cover everybody. Premiums are going up. Already people are seeing their premiums going up. Doctors are retiring. They're saying, I'm not going to work under Obamacare. It's as Max Baucus said, it is a train wreck about to happen.
Well, what's some of the defenses of it? I mean, I know that Obama's obviously pretty fond of it. It was probably one of the first things he actually did when he was in office was trying to get Obamacare passed. And interestingly enough is how quickly it was passed. I mean, we kind of joked about that before the show, just how fast it got through.
Well, it took them 2 years.
2 years to get through.
It took 2 years for it to get through. And they only got it through because they had 60 members of the Senate and they were able to do it. And they really, I think, got caught by realizing that they didn't really intend it to be exactly the way it is. Right. I think they thought they would go to conference with the House and there would be some changes made. But it is a nightmare for the American people and nothing but a nightmare.
Well, is there anything that you feel that the Republican Party can do right now? I know that especially with the budget plan, the Paul Ryan budget plan, that it has the idea of repealing Obamacare, but that's never going to get passed. I mean, I think we both know that it's going to be awfully hard to get that document passed with the President Obama still sitting there, and that's kind of his baby.
Well, hope springs eternal. We have voted over 30 times to repeal it, and we will continue to do that because Republicans understand what a disaster that bill is for our country.
Could it ever get repassed? I mean, even if we hit the debt ceiling, is there any way that could get repealed? Is what I'm trying to say. Obamacare.
Well, when we come to having to raise the debt ceiling, I suspect that we will see something happen that will make changes. We won't vote to raise the debt ceiling without getting something in return. I'm not sure what that's going to be, but we are proposing that priorities be established, and we really don't have to raise the debt ceiling again if we simply use the money that we're taking in to pay our responsibilities. We could do that. So we've passed a bill that prioritizes spending. That is, you pay the debt, the interest on the debt, and you make the other payments that you have to make, Medicare, Social Security, those things. But it would make a difference to other spending, which is called discretionary spending.
Right. I want to talk too real quickly about the sequester cuts that have happened, the reducement in spending. Is that going to affect us at all here? I mean, I know that when Obama came out and talked about how we're going to see flight delays, reduce in teachers' salaries and all this stuff too. He kind of brought this overwhelming fear of it, I guess, really. And now, are we going to see it locally here at all? I guess I've read some stuff about maybe the Parkway or anything like that. But do you see anything?
They have made some. They've done what they can to make it hurt the public as much as they possibly can, and they've done that with the Parkway. They've said they're going to delay opening of campgrounds and different things. It just depends on the administration. It's up to the administration whether they want to make the sequester cuts be less painful or more painful to the American people.
It's about where you're going to cut.
That's exactly right. And it's only about a 2.7%.
Yeah, it's only 2% reduction.
Reduction in increases. That's right. And I don't think there's any American in this country that doesn't believe the federal government spending couldn't take a 5% cut without noticing any difference. I mean, when I ran a community college or when I had other responsibilities in state government, we were always cutting 5% or 10% different years because of problems with the budget. And we did that, and we never really hurt the services for people. But the president wants to raise taxes again, and he's trying to say to the American people, okay, this is a result of the sequester. Now you pressure the Republicans to raise taxes. It's not working.
We just raised them, though, just about 2 months ago.
That's right, $600 billion at the end of the year.
Right.
And Obamacare raises them
that
$1 trillion.
That raises it, so it's actually a two increases in taxes right there.
That's exactly right.
Okay. Well, it's just interesting, I guess, and I appreciate you coming on and speaking with me today and sharing a little bit about the two differences, I guess, in the budget plan.
You're extremely well informed, and I'm really proud of you. I wish that the 42% of the people who answered a questionnaire in the last few days who know nothing about Obamacare could somehow or another get the enlightenment that you've had.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you, and I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
We're back in a minute with more MTN Channel 18.